Well, Jean, welcome to the Layered Onion podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Do you think you can introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Jean Delcourt, and I'm a teacher, almost a retired teacher, and an artist, and a grandfather, and a husband, and yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, you're so many things. And I have to say, I was really excited to have you on this podcast, but I think I'm going to start at the beginning. You're from Maine.
I grew up in Maine, yeah.
But your roots are in Canada, in Quebec?
Well, not my roots. My grandparents' roots are.
Okay.
They got recruited. Well, my grandmother on my dad's side was recruited. Her father was recruited to go to Maine to work in the paper mills from Quebec. And they were, reservation life is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, I guess, back in the turn of the century, the 18 to the 1900s, jobs might have been pretty scarce. I don't know. I don't know a lot about them, to be honest. I haven't researched them. I've seen too many people trying to find their native roots get really judged by tribes, saying you just want in for the benefits, and I don't need that, I don't need any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been me.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit. I know that you're a teacher, and originally you taught social studies, correct? Mm-hmm. And now you teach, and you're going to 2 weeks left, but what are you teaching now?
I've been teaching woodshop.
Oh, woodshop, okay.
At the MG21 charter school in Monona. There I've taught, we built little log cabin little libraries.
Oh.
And we tried to build some steamer trunks, but we ran out of time and materials, and we ended up throwing them all away. It was a shame.
Did you know the executive director for the little libraries lives in Stoughton?
You didn't know that? Nationwide?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Interesting, huh?
I built canoes with the school. We built 3 canoes. One that was donated to the Friends of San Damiano's big gala fundraiser last spring, and it auctioned off for $6,000.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, that was really awesome. And the understanding was, when we proposed it to them, whatever proceeds are raised, if the school can get half, we'll donate the canoe, and that's how it played out. It was very nice. Yeah.
Well, how exciting to have your second stint teaching be in something you're passionate about, woodworking. How did you get into woodworking and learning about wood as an art?
It seems like all my life I've loved pounding nails. When I was a little kid, I don't know anything about carpentry then. I just liked building forts with my friends, and we would just get nails, straighten them out. We'd just find old nails in thrown away wood and straighten out the nails and just build stuff. That's kind of how it started. Making goalie goals for playing street hockey. Same thing, just pounding nails and hanging sheets behind it with staple guns to serve as the net. And then I went away. I worked as a tree cutter for the Great Northern Paper Company years ago, till my car died, and then I didn't have any means of travel, so I joined the Army, and I was in the service for 10 years.
So 10 years, and you were in the Army?
3 years in the Army and 7 in the Air Force.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And did you travel?
I went to Korea and Australia while I was in the Army, but just for 75 days.
Okay.
Both, each 75 days. And then I was in Hawaii the whole time. That's where I got stationed. And that's where my mom and her side of the family all lived at the time. Just before I graduated from high school, I think days before I graduated from high school, my mom graduated from college at the University of Southern Maine, and the day after that got married to her second husband, and the day after that they moved to Hawaii, and the day after that I graduated from high school. So it was a very busy week. My original intention with the Army was to go to Alaska. It's been one of my pipe dreams. It's still a bucket list item I've not realized, to go to Alaska. And I was going to get stationed there. And I called my mom and told her, and she started crying and said, "If you can change it, can you please come here? We miss you, and you don't know my side of the family at all." So I did. I moved there, and the truth is, I didn't love Hawaii. I didn't enjoy it there. I'm sort of a cold weather guy,
Ah,
and the hot weather was not really my thing.
do you know that's the only state I haven't been to is Alaska?
Yeah,
And
me,
so
it's Alaska, Washington, and Oregon.
yeah, so that's on my bucket list as well. So, well, let's talk about the woodworking then. How did you take the path and learn about it and become passionate?
Let's see. When I did my student teaching as an undergraduate at the university, I student taught at Shabazz High School, and I fell in love with it and thought this is the only place I want to teach. So when I finished school, the next semester, I had one semester left after I student taught. When I finished school, I went to the principal and I said, "How do I get in?" I said, "I want to teach here." And he said, we're a small school and we don't have any openings right now. You're going to have to wait for an opening to apply. And so I thought, what do I do? I don't really want to teach anywhere else, so I need to stall on my student loans. So I thought, I'll go to grad school. And I looked into grad school, and they all required GREs, and I just was done with that kind of school. I just couldn't handle it anymore. The art department didn't require them at the UW. So I thought, well, I've done enough things. I make baskets. I make willow baskets in the winter. I'll use those as a portfolio. I was at the time doing powwow dancing, and I had a couple of outfits that I made, and I used those, and they accepted me. And that's where I decided I want to do sculpture. I'm interested in sculpture. There was nobody there that did the kind of sculpture I was interested in. Truman Lowe did interesting sculptures, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to carve wood.
Mm-hmm.
And no one else did that. There was another professor there. He might have retired by now, named Tom Lozier. He did wood. He worked with wood, but he made really kind of funky furniture. And again, that's not what I wanted to do. So I didn't. I took one class with him and did some stuff, but I wasn't really very interested. So Truman told me to look up Harry Whitehorse, and he said he's not a professor, but he lives down in Monona. He's an artist. He's been carving forever. So I looked him up. I went to his house and knocked on his door and asked if he would be interested in mentoring me. And that very day, come on in. He come on in, and we sat down, listening. Turned me on to classical music because he had been serious hearing loss, and classical music was easier on his hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And we started carving little birds. That's where he started me on, is carving little birds, chickadees and cardinals and rose-breasted grosbeaks, all kinds of cool birds that he then put into an Audubon show at Old Brick Gardens later in the year, and sold out in half an hour. He had 40 birds. They sold out in half an hour. So that was a start. And then he said, "Gene, why don't you join our snow carving, the Ho-Chunk snow carving team? We're going to be traveling around the Midwest doing snow carving festivals in the international line. We won't be competing against states or locals. We're going to be competing internationally." So that sounded fun. I'd never done it, but it's sculpture. So I joined, and we went to, 6 or 7 different events over the next 2 years and won them all.
Oh, wow.
He just had such an eye, and he knew how to woo a crowd. He knew what to carve that would really get people emotionally. And so he just kept winning. We actually qualified to go to Lillehammer in the Olympics that winter, but we didn't go because the IOC said, you represent the U.S. And Harry said, Ho-Chunk have sponsored us from the beginning.
Right.
If we can't represent them, we're not, I thought we were supposed to be a sovereign nation. It's only semi-sovereign. They wouldn't let us do it, so we didn't go. But while we were at the very first one in Frankenmuth, Michigan, the Danish team, there was a Danish team there, their leader, their captain, told us, I'm organizing a wood sculpture festival for the summer in Hoya on the west coast of Denmark. You should apply. And Harry said, "Geez, Gene, that's what you've been looking for. Apply." So I applied, and I got accepted. And I went to a whole bunch of them after that over the years. And that's really where I got my start with big sculpture. Matter of fact, the piece I did in Hoya was the very first big sculpture I did. I did some smaller ones in grad school, but the first big one, really big one, was in
So talk to me about big. You mean like as big as you?
Bigger than me.
Bigger than you.
You can be as big as a 10-foot log. I've carved logs that were 40 inches across, diameter, really big logs. And not everything ends up that big, but you try to use as much of it as you can, so it's not wasted. And the rest of that was history. I did lots of sculptures, And it was sort of a feast and famine thing. Sometimes when you sell a sculpture, that's great. You can do really well. But when you don't, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to consolidate all of our credit cards because we were behind and had to go to what are they called? The companies that help you get out of debt. There's a word for it. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, we did that, and that's when I finished graduate school, I needed to get a job because sculpture wasn't enough. It wasn't making enough doing that. Wasn't connected enough, and I went back to Shabazz, and the principal said, "We don't have any openings yet. You got to hang in there, get a job somewhere else." So I put my application in with the school district and got an interview with West High School almost immediately.
Mm.
And when I walked into the interview, the head principal of the school, I saw it in her eyes. I got this job. She's going to hire me, because she was under a lot of pressure from the African American community, because they were just introducing an African American history course for juniors. And they insisted this can't be taught by a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. It cannot be. At least we would really, really recommend against that. And because I'm not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, I knew. We did the interview. She called me that afternoon and offered me the job. There was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who threatened to sue the district because she had a master's degree in African American history. And the union met with her and said, "We'll promise you the next job." Mm. And it happened that same summer. So she got a job in that, and she backed off. But I felt a little weird, but she got a job, and so I took it. And I didn't have any background in it, so I had to do some research over the last half of the summer, getting myself ready to teach it. But it worked out okay.
But I think about it. I think having that Master's of Fine Arts and then teaching history, I think in some ways you brought something very different to the.
And I think if you talk to any kid I ever taught, they'd say he was very different. His approach was very different to teaching.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're too rigid about that, and sometimes it's the creativity that is the part that's the most important.
Right.
And let's face it, an artist and taking a piece of wood and then figuring out what to do, that is a lot of creativity.
Right.
And vision, a lot of vision.
That's kind of what it takes. You got to, if you start, I've done this before, you just start in on it, just go at it with a chainsaw. You just start tearing it apart and making holes and then turn something abstract out of it. That doesn't require vision right away. You got to first make some marks. You got to make some cuts and some divots and some holes and stuff, and then let the creativity take over.
So you start with a chainsaw, and then maybe you have a lot of tools in front of you. Maybe you can tell me when do you use these tools? When do they come into play?
I'd rather be doing chisel work than chainsaw work.
Okay.
It's easier on the body. It's easier on your ears, for sure. And so some people will take it much, much further down with a chainsaw, and I just like to get it very rough and then start. And if I have time, like the symposiums are usually 6 to 10 days. That gives you enough time to just really, you don't have to do it with chainsaws. Speed carving is something that's become very popular in this country and in Canada, where people are just a 2-day festival, huge sponsorships and big competition. It's always competitions that are judged, and I don't know what the prizes are, but the artwork they create is spectacular. I don't mean to say that what I do is any better. It's not. It's probably less. They're probably better than what I'll do, but the process is very different. And what's fun about symposiums is the community you make, the time you spend with the other artists, every meal, having beers at the end of the day. That's really fun. Where these guys are working 10, 12 hours just cranking out a piece. I don't think there's a lot of time for that kind of
camaraderie,
camaraderie. And so this is very different from what chainsaw sculptures are, because they'll take it to the end and then just use a grinder, like one of these tools I brought, angle grinders, just does this with either a sanding disc or this big burr, and just kind of smooth things out, get all the cut marks off and things like that, and then put a sanding disc on it and sand it smooth. I use this more as a remover than a sander. That burr will take off an awful lot of wood. It really removes the wood fast.
So what is the best wood to carve on?
The easiest wood to carve on is basswood.
Basswood, because it's soft.
It's soft and it's forgiving. You can go against the grain and it won't split.
Okay.
You can go any direction you want with it and it won't split. So it carves very easy. It's what any carving class that you might attend, they'll start you with a block and a knife and you start whittling. It's always basswood. Butternut, if you can get it, carves very nice too, and it's much prettier. It's a beautiful, beautiful wood, real grainy. All the grain lines really show, and it's the color of, if you can imagine Dairy Queen chocolate ice cream. It's that color.
That color.
That color. When you oil it, you get some yellows in between in the grains too. It's
and where's
gorgeous.
butternut native to?
It's here. It is here. But there's been a blight that has wiped out almost all of them.
Okay.
Yeah. You can carve spruce, you can carve pine. Spruce doesn't crack much, so that's kind of nice. But it's a little bit, boring's not the right word, but it's kind of the right word. You don't see a lot of grain. You don't see the grain. And the grain is what really makes up a sculpture. And then hickory you don't want to touch because it as it grows, it sucks silica out of the soil, and it's in the pores of the wood, and it'll dull your tools right now.
Okay.
Try to cut one in half. Your saw needs to be sharpened already. But I've never tried elm. I've done a lot of cherry wood. Cherry wood's really, really pretty, but it cracks a lot if it isn't fully dry. Oak is the master, but it's the hardest wood to carve. When it's green, it carves pretty well, but you risk cracking. But when it's done, if you did an absolutely identical piece in basswood and in oak, the oak would look so much better. It would stand out so much more, even though they're exactly the same because of the nature of the grain and the integrity of the wood. It's just spectacular wood. And we've got, for the festival that's coming up, we've got some 6, 7, or 8 logs of oak that are coming. As a matter of fact, I think they're going to be delivered this afternoon. So
well, maybe talk a little bit about the festival.
Well, in two summers ago, I went to Germany and participated in a festival, and came home. My wife joined me for the second time, and we came home and said, it would be so nice if we can organize a sculpture festival. And at the time I was 63 and thinking, if I don't do it now, I don't know if I'll be able to do it. So, just physically I won't be able to do it as a participant. So we started talking. We talked to Harry Whitehorse's, his wife, and he's been dead for 5 years or so, but she loved the idea because I wanted to name it after him because he was my inspiration. And she was into the idea. And then one day at San Damiano, she was just out there walking around because it's beautiful. And once the city bought it, it was open to the public. She met a woman named Nancy Moore, who's a council member city council member in Monona, told her about the idea. Nancy called me up and said, let's meet and talk about this. So we met at a little coffee shop, and I told her, and she brought one of the people who's on the Friends of San Damiano to talk. And by the time we finished, it was on. Let's make this happen. We're going to make this happen. So we got an application to apply for a grant through the Monona Tourism Commission, and we got it. It was huge. I'm not going to say how much, but it was big, really big. And then Madison's, Madison Community Foundation gave us a really big grant. Another organization in Madison called the GEM Grant for marketing. We got a really big grant from them. And so we just got a lot of money. Dane Arts gave us money. Ho Chung gave us a lot of money. So we could really, this changed from a small symposium where we were hoping families might volunteer to bring lunch for the artists. Now we're talking about 30 people eating lunch, and no family can do that. So we had to raise money to cover all the cost of meals. But we've done it. It's all ready. We have some really nice meals happening. Mundo Esperanza, are you familiar with them? They're it's a sister city organization with Madison and Cusco, Peru.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's not what the organization's all about, but that's part of it. They're involved. They gave us the name of an artist there who's going to come, and they're going to do on Saturday evening, I believe, or Sunday evening. Excuse me. They're going to do what's called a pachamanca, which is a Quechuan harvest feast. That's you dig a big hole in the ground and fill it with red rocks and put all the food inside a berry and let it cook. That's going to happen. Which
that
is
sounds
very
cool.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the fun things that'll happen. We're going to take all the artists on a Betty Lou cruise for a meal, just because it's unique. And things like that.
And it's which weekend?
It's not the weekend. It's from the 14th to the 22nd. So it's 9 days of June.
June.
Yeah.
So, well, that'll be exciting.
Please mark your calendar.
I'm going to mark it down.
This, please mark your calendar.
Actually, I'm thinking how great it would be to have that pit. A
picture of the pit?
Of the food in here in the chalet.
Well, we've got a number of photographers working on taking pictures over the course of the week, and a videographer, and I have a friend who's a very good photographer, but he's doing it just because it's his hobby and he wants to be involved. So he'll be taking thousands of pictures, I'm sure. So we should have some good pictures of all these things.
So what are you going to carve? You're going to be on you're going to carve,
I'll be
right?
one of the carvers, yeah.
Okay.
The theme of the symposium or the festival is nature or the environment. And I decided I'm going to do a piece that's a tribute to the missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Okay.
So it'll be a woman wrapped in a blanket with that red hand on her face, and I'll have some information because I'm sure many of the people that are going to be coming to the festival are oblivious because it doesn't affect mainstream United States very much, but it's very much an issue in Native America. So I'd like to draw some attention to that and rationalize it by saying the environment in the United States or in America, both the U.S. and Canada, for Native women is a very, very different one from women from any other and from the mainstream, because there's this fear of being stolen or killed, and there's been this isn't anything new. This didn't just coincide with the onslaught of fracking out in the Dakotas, although that it's really ramped up since then. A lot of women have gone missing, and either sold into the sex industry to take care of the camps, these oil rig camps, or just murdered. I don't know, but there is a growing movement to draw attention. I think the DOJ in Madison has a task force that's doing something. I'll make contact with them to get information that I can post in front of my workspace for people to see.
So will you be doing it alone, or will you have a team with you working?
No, it's just me.
Just you.
Yeah, all the artists will just be alone.
Okay.
And they're coming from like 9 different countries, maybe 10 different countries. And it's very exciting.
And there's 30 artists?
No. The number 30 comes from a lot of the artists are bringing their plus ones.
Oh, okay.
And then the board people will probably be on site. Some of the volunteers we may be allowed to eat if there's enough food.
Okay. So let's look at your tools here.
Okay.
So
this package of chisels go onto this machine.
Oh, okay.
And it's a grinder, but it has this attachment so the grinding wheel, the spindle turns, but it's sort of square. The corners are slightly rounded, but it's square. And every time a corner hits the bottom of the chisel, is a spring inside. So every time the square hits it, it shoots it forward.
Oh.
So it's a carver. It's
okay.
It works really well. It's an English tool that is way overpriced. But I used one once at a symposium in Green Bay. A man just brought it to me. I was carving a base from a piece that I did, and he said, "You should try this." So I tried it, and it was oak. It just went through like butter. Like, wow, this is great. So I just got this year.
Oh, I bet you this must be hard on your.
These the harder part is springing this. This is used for hitting.
Oh,
hitting
okay.
as you go through it. And this, I just made this past winter out of a piece of ironwood. I was so excited to make it. I didn't think I should dry it first, and so I got this giant crack in it. But it's very heavy because ironwood is incredibly heavy wood and very strong. I don't think it'll ever break. It'll break the wood on the chisels before
it would do that.
This is damaged. And that just happened, so I can replace the handles easily enough.
So, okay, there's so many different tools here.
Yeah.
How would you even know which one to use when?
It just depends on what it is you're doing. If I'm working on eyes and I need to start a line, this is a V. It cuts really, really fine lines, so I could be moving it around as I'm tapping to make curves and things like that. Now, once that's done, I might use a slightly larger one, like this one, to take the edges out. And so I just got to end up with just a ridge. If I'm working really, really taking off big chunks, I'll use one of these. Let's see what else. If I'm doing something straight, something square, I'll just use a straight chisel like this.
And did you learn all this from Harry Whitehorse?
Yeah, but also going to symposiums.
Okay.
I went the first time I went. The biggest chisel I had was this, and I was carving a huge oak log, and so it was really slow because it was so small. And an Italian artist gave me a chisel that was even wider than this, and so I used that the whole time. I still have it, but the handle is broken off, so it's just sitting in my tool shop, waiting for a new handle.
Well, I'm particularly interested in that one there. Why there's such a deep curve?
So you can scoop out.
Scooping. Okay.
Depressions and things like that. And there's some smaller versions. I don't think they're here. They're with another thing of this. And I don't think there's any in here. There's no scoop gouges, they're called. No, here.
So if you were telling someone, so like with your class in Monona, what do they start with? Do they start with the whittling, or how do they start?
We haven't done any carving because chisels are really expensive.
All right.
I think this chisel costs $90.
Oh my goodness.
And so for us, you can buy a set of these, 4 of them. This one that's even more curved, one that's like this is really, really curved, and the third one that's a big V like this, a fourth one. But it's about $150. And at Shabazz, I had a carving class because a neighbor cut down a big basswood tree, and I was coming home from lunch. I rode my bike down to Subway for lunch and saw them cutting these trees down. And I said, "Can I have these trees for my class?" And they gave them to us, and so we could have a carving class. And each kid raised $150 to buy their own chisels. We don't ask a family to do that at MT21, which is unfortunate, but that means we can't afford to buy chisels for everybody. So carving is, and it's really dangerous.
Okay.
You can get really cut if you're not paying attention. And since COVID, kids don't pay as much attention as they used to. COVID really has messed up the education process, in my opinion. So we start mostly with, I brought all of my woodworking tools to the school shop. Chop saws and table saws and band saws and drills and planers and dust collection systems. That's all belonged to me. And we made furniture. Do you know what a shave horse is? It's this really cool tool. You sit on it and it has a pivoting arm that goes to the floor and has a piece here you put your feet on, and when you push it, the front comes down on a slanted piece and pins a piece of wood inside there.
Oh.
And then you can use a draw knife or a draw knife is a flat blade that's sharp on the edge and has handles, and you can shave the wood.
Okay.
Or a spoke shave. There's a tool you can buy that does that too. And we made, what were we making with those? We were making bows, ash bows.
Oh.
And then after the I think the Sandy Hook school shooting, no more weapons. You can't make weapons. One kid had made, as an individual project, he'd made a wooden samurai sword, which was really cool, out of really fancy, what's the name of that wood? Bloodwood. So it's really orange and red, really pretty wood in this. And the scabbard for the knife, is that what it's called? The sheath for the sword was made out of walnut. And he really did a meticulous job, sanded it smooth, oiled it, and it was gorgeous. But after that, it was right after that, we started making bows, and they said no more. So the shave horses were no longer needed. We took them apart and used the wood for making the little logs for the log cabins. That's what we ended up using. That project, and there was 9 kids in the class, and they each needed, probably 11 layers, 44 little logs each, made from just scrap. We did it. did it all from scraps, just whatever we had.
And this is for the little libraries.
Little libraries, yeah. And we made little tiny shingles to
Ah.
glue in place for the roof. It was really nice. They were really cool. And what else have they made? The canoe class, we made it exactly like you would make a birch bark canoe, except we used marine grade plywood because birch bark is hard to get by, hard to come by. You have to go 4 hours north into the Chequamegon to go hunt on a birch tree big enough to get it. I just can't do that. So we used marine grade plywood, but every other process was exactly the same. You know, we didn't harvest spruce root, which is what you tie the gunnels on with, you know, all the way up and down the length of the top. We used rattan. I bought rattan from some rattan store. Works just as well. I did one recently with the Title VI kids, the Native kids from the school district, and we used parachute cord.
Okay.
It was cheaper and even stronger than the spruce root. And spruce root takes so long to process. You got to boil it and split it and boil it and split it. 500 feet of it, you know, so it's a lot of work. And we only meet twice a week, and we'd never have enough time to finish it in a trimester.
So did they take the canoe out on water?
It's sitting in Hamilton Middle School right now.
Okay.
They did a land acknowledgement there a couple of days ago, and I hope they'll take it out into the water. The ones we made at school, we'll be bringing out into the water on the last day of classes. We've done that before.
How exciting!
Yeah, it's really fun. The one that got auctioned off has been in the water, and it was and it didn't leak at all.
Okay.
The first canoe we made, we didn't use marine grade. We used Menard's 1/4-inch plywood. And the glue inside that is very, very rigid. It's not flexible. It doesn't soften when you heat it. And so as we're bending, trying to bend it, it would crack, and we'd have to repair the cracks. That leaked a little bit. You know, 45 minutes on the water, and there was a couple of gallons of water in the canoe. So that one was that was a learning curve. Everything we've made since then have been really, really nice and don't leak at all. Well,
we're coming close to our time, but I haven't even touched on one area of your work that to me is quite a spiritual and meaningful is you make green coffins. And what made you?
What prompted that?
Yeah. Prompt is a great word.
It's a bit of a long story. My dad died in 1989.
Okay.
And so I was still I had just gotten out of the service. I was in college, no money. One of my sisters was going through college, raising 3 kids. My other sister was the only one that was a little more stable than we were. And we had never had any experience dealing with death. You know, so we went to the funeral home of a family who we all knew, went to the same church forever, went to school with all their kids, and all we got was the pat business spiel. You want to honor your dad. You know, your dad was such a outdoorsman. Let's give him a beautiful oak casket at $6,000. And we didn't know that there were options. We didn't even know to say no. Embalming, we didn't know you didn't have to do that. And they didn't volunteer that. So before we knew it, it was a $10,000 gig. And that was in 1989.
I know, and
it's still the same and more now. And I walking away from that, I thought there's got to be a better way, but I didn't know what that was. And when I was in grad school, there was a woman, she's passed away now, but very influential woman named Ray Atira Soncia. Does that ring a bell? Do you know her? She and her husband, Math, put on a death and dying workshop and asked me to be part of it. And my one contribution were baskets, for babies. If a baby were to die and they wanted to bury him in a green cemetery, you can use these beautiful willow baskets. And ended up a woman who I know did lose a baby close to term and wanted to bury him in a basket up at one of the green cemeteries in Barneville. And from there, the thought of building a casket, I think watching the series Deadwood, if you've ever seen Deadwood, it's excellent. It's gory and hard, but it's excellent. A little boy dies and the father makes him a casket. And I thought, geez, I could totally do that. I could totally do that. It started, a friend of mine in San Antonio died, and I called his family and I said, I'd like to build this casket. I'll drive down and if you can find me a place to do it, I'll do it right there. So the wife's sister let me use her garage, and we built a casket, and that felt really good. It was really well received, and the family loved it, and I didn't ask for any money. I just did it out because he was my good friend. And then I started making some for double the cost of the materials. I'll make one for double the cost of materials, and I made a couple that way out of cedar, and it wasn't very much. Materials might have been $200 at the most. And then my father-in-law died, and he was sick at home for 3 years, and they wanted to cremate him, but his wife, my mother-in-law, and they were living at our house, said, "Will you build him a box?" So I built him a box, and this one was all metal free, and that just sort of, I just thought that this could be a viable way to make money, and I can still stay way under the funeral homes, the industry standard. So I make a all metal free casket with trim, and you'll see some pictures I'll send you later of caskets they're quite lovely, they're quite nice, and the most I charge is $1,200, where even just the plainest pine box made out of plywood is going to cost more than that from the funeral.
But what a lovely tribute to have done that, and kind of for your father-in-laws and your father, and I think what a lovely thought that they're buried in something that was built with love, and even doing it for other people. I mean, what a gift.
The idea behind that is to give people another option, a better option than getting. I know that some funeral home people may hear this and really object, but it's a business. I understand it's a business, and they can't do it for free. But I still, for the most part, I still feel that they're very predatory. Like the example of the one in South Dakota, that was just a horrible thing to do. Because they didn't do much. I'm sure they embalmed him. They kept him on ice until the funeral, which was a week and a half. But that's not $6,000. Then they drove him to the site, which was over 100 miles, but still $6,000 is a lot of money to charge. And they just created it, knowing most of the people coming off the reservation may not be very educated and don't know their options, and there's no one there to tell them about that. There's no advocacy group to advise on how not to get suckered. And so they just take advantage of it. I've seen it in a number of places. I actually brought a dead woman in her casket in my truck to Nebraska. We just put a bunch of dry ice inside, but it was winter anyway. And the funeral home didn't do anything except put her dress on, and they just cut the back and just tuck it around her. They don't put it on her, and drove her to the cemetery, which was only about 5 miles away, and charged $2,500 because that's what their funeral benefit was. And so the family had to raise the money for the casket, and I just thought, that's shitty, Oh, sorry. Can I get away on a podcast? Can I get away with that?
Yeah, that's okay. No worries.
Yeah. But it's a terrible thing to do. And so I just really like the thought of giving people a better option. And if I could sell a casket or two a month, once I'm retired, and my daughter's going to help me advertise a little bit, because I've never advertised. It's just been word of mouth. I'm sure I can get two caskets a month easily. And then any sculptures I get on the side that'll be for the bucket list.
There you go. Well, I so appreciate you coming, but what I'm really excited is coming out to the festival.
Please do.
And watching you carve, and I think, I'll be taking some pictures and really excited to see your work.
The artists will all be encouraged to interact with the public. So ask them questions, talk with them. There may be a couple that don't speak English.
Okay.
There's a man from the Czech Republic. If his wife isn't, beside him, he won't be able to communicate with him because he doesn't speak English. And is there another? I think maybe a woman from Poland doesn't speak great English. But they always say that, and their English ends up being quite fine. A German man that hosted us when we went to Germany 2 years ago, he claims that his English is terrible, but you can totally have
right. They put us all to shame. Right?
Their English is much more proper,
Yeah, they put us all to shame. Well, I wanted to thank you, and I'm going to give you the shallot, and I hope that we can have maybe one of your pieces in the next, version or something for the festival.
I did send you a picture of a piece that I did last fall in the Farley Center's Naturescape art show. I don't know. I think that's what it's called. It's in their cemetery, it's found objects that artists go in and make these found object pieces. And because my sawmill is there and a bunch of logs that I have brought are there, I thought if I make a sculpture out of this log, that's sort of a found piece, so because it's on your property. And they said, go for it. That'll be fine. So I did, and it actually sold. So that was really nice. But it's a piece I'm really proud of. And you have a picture of it now. So maybe that could go in there. That would be cool.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing more of your work.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate it.